Hey guys, welcome back. I thought for the fourth part of our discussion of economic life, I would just talk without some PowerPoints here for a few minutes. And so far, we've discussed, among other things, different modes of exchange, and that included generalized reciprocity. It included balanced reciprocity, systems of redistribution, potlatching, and now we need to move on to the idea of negative reciprocity. So, in order to talk about negative reciprocity, you want to sort of compare it or contrast it with generalized and balanced reciprocity. Think about generalized reciprocity and balanced reciprocity. Both of those things are based on the idea that you and I are going to enter an exchange, and that first of all, we're not necessarily concerned about actually exchanging goods. The good isn't the important thing. This is a moral transaction that we're engaged in. And as a moral transaction, it's not just about the exchange of items or the exchange of a service or anything like that. It is about reinforcing our relationship. Remember what Zoma said, right? We don't exchange with goods, we exchange with people. And that we're not so much interested in the value of the things we're exchanging. When we get to balanced reciprocity, we do want to exchange more or less equivalent values. And we're going to exchange them within a given culturally appropriate length of time. Now, when we talk about negative reciprocity, negative reciprocity on the other hand, negative reciprocity includes exchanges where each party that is entering this exchange wants to benefit or seeks benefit at the expense of the other. So when we enter these exchanges, the goal of the exchange is to get more. I want to get more than I'm given. I want to receive more than is given. So we have different examples of that. We have, for example, barter systems. People trying to trade goods for goods. How many chickens will you give me for a bicycle? But no matter what, the parties entering that, when they walk away from that exchange, maybe they're both going to think they got the better end of that deal. They're not going in there to exchange equivalent values. They're bartering with the idea that they're going to walk away with more than they started with, or with something better than what they started with. Miller gives you some examples of other forms of negative reciprocity that would include stealing, right, is negative reciprocity. It's not necessarily a culturally acceptable mode of exchange, but it is definitely one where one party is getting more than the other. Exploitation, she talks about exploitation. She talks about gambling, right? These are examples of types of negative reciprocity. But we also need to talk about systems, not just examples of, but systems of exchange. So we can now come up to the idea of a market, right? Market societies. Market relations involve impersonal exchanges, so they are mechanical exchanges for profit, right? The idea of entering a market exchange is to make a profit. Mediated by money. These exchanges are mediated by money. I'm going to call it a general purpose money. Anthropologists sometimes also talk about limited purpose money. There are some societies that have, or some cultures that have, limited purpose money. In other words, they have money, they have a currency, but the currency can only be used for certain very limited exchanges. There are some exchanges in that society that would be out of bounds to the use of money. But market exchanges are certainly ones, mediated by money. And I need to get a little reference here for you. So I'm looking in that book by Peoples and Bailey. And when they talk about market exchanges, they say that there's always going to be in this market system, there's going to be some object that serves as a medium of exchange, and that's going to be money. Now, money not only serves as a medium of exchange, but it also serves as a way to store value. You can store value in money. You can, because why? Because you can use it at any time. If my value is in a crop, for example, I can't store that for very long, but I can store money for an indefinite period of time, and I can draw upon it whenever I want to. So markets have a medium of exchange, right? Money, a currency. Markets also have a rate, right? They establish a rate at which goods and services can be exchanged for money. So in other words, there are prices that are set. The prices are very often are determined by supply and demand. And then finally, usually these market societies are also societies where property is held privately, according to that idea of exclusionary rights. Okay, so market relations are, as I said, market relations are more or less impersonal. On the chart I gave you, I talked about nearness and distance. So when we are exchanging goods in this market society, sometimes we're exchanging for goods that are coming from all over the world, and that they are very impersonal. In other words, when I go to Sheetz and buy a cup of coffee, who am I getting that from? Who am I buying that from? Who is that exchange with? It's certainly not with the person behind the cash register, right? The exchange is between me and maybe Sheetz Corporation, and that would be a very, very impersonal exchange. When you buy something at Walmart, you're not exchanging with the person behind the cash register. You're exchanging with Walmart Corporation. That's an impersonal exchange. And maybe even those tube socks that you bought at Walmart are coming to you from China or someplace like that. So that's really negative reciprocity. In summary, right? Negative reciprocity are systems of exchange or examples of exchange where either party entering the exchange wants more out of the exchange than the other person. Okay, they're trying to benefit at the expense of the other. Okay, so we're going to move on now to part 5. And when we get to part 5, we are going to start talking about, we're going to start going into a little bit of detail on some of these modes of livelihood. So we're going to talk about foraging society. We're going to talk about horticultural society. We're going to talk about pastoral society, and we're going to say a little something about agricultural society. And we're going to maybe do a little something about globalization, and we're going to wrap this whole thing up.